Anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
These awards, as you know, are a celebration of achievement, effort, change, innovation, management, insight, and the many other traits necessary to sustain a proud profession like midwifery and consistent services in maternity.
We invite people to nominate a colleague or a student or a manager, whatever, where they think that person's a real trailblazer.
And it's really a celebration of all that's good in midwifery and maternity care.
They recognise individuals, they recognise teams, management and educators. Anyone who values excellence and makes improvements. They are essentially a celebration of all of your achievements. So, shall we get on with it? What you do with your day-to-day lives, I just admire you hugely. If you do want to nominate a colleague, a friend, maybe yourself, please speak to the organisers and visit the website, and I really hope that we'll see you at that.
Okay, now the first award is... What's
nothing, I don't know.
We have had a 40% caesarean section rate in the National Maternity Hospital. That is major abdominal surgery.
Around 40,000 mums did not return to work in 2022. It's even more relevant if you're a mum who's experienced birth trauma.
We spend more money on litigation than we currently spend on the maternity services. It's bonkers.
It's in all of our interests, and particularly the government, to improve maternity services.
We can't achieve our mission unless we bring parents and professionals together.
A revolution needs to happen. We need to start working together.
I know it's a hard time, but for goodness sake, it's the best profession in the world.
Be proud to be midwives, be proud of the job that we do, and continue to celebrate our successes.
Midwives make a difference to women every single day, and let's not lose that. It's more important than anything.
Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box sets curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
These awards, as you know, are a celebration of achievement, effort, change, innovation, management, insight, and the many other traits necessary to sustain a proud profession like midwifery and consistent services in maternity.
We invite people to nominate a colleague or a student or a manager, whatever, where they think that person's real trailblazers.
And it's really a celebration of all that's good in midwifery and maternity care.
They recognise individuals, they recognise teams, management and educators. Anyone who values excellence and makes improvements. They are essentially a celebration of all of your achievements. So, shall we get on with it? What you do with your day-to-day lives, I just admire you hugely. If you do want to nominate a colleague, a friend, maybe yourself, please speak to the organisers and visit the website, and I really hope that we'll see you at that.
Okay, now the first award is... What's
nothing, I don't know.
We have had a 40% caesarean section rate in the National Maternity Hospital. That is major abdominal surgery.
Around 40,000 mums did not return to work in 2022. It's even more relevant if you're a mum who's experienced birth trauma.
We spend more money on litigation than we currently spend on the maternity services. It's bonkers.
It's in all of our interests, and particularly the government, to improve maternity services.
We can't achieve our mission unless we bring parents and professionals together.
A revolution needs to happen. We need to start working together.
I know it's a hard time, but for goodness sake, it's the best profession in the world.
Be proud to be midwives, be proud of the job that we do, and continue to celebrate our successes.
Midwives make a difference to women every single day, and let's not lose that. It's more important than anything.
Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box set's curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
These awards, as you know, are a celebration of achievement, effort, change, innovation, management, insight and the many other traits necessary to sustain a proud profession like midwifery and consistent services in maternity.
We invite people to nominate a colleague or a student or a manager, whatever, where they think that person's real trailblazers.
And it's really a celebration of all that's good in midwifery and maternity care.
They recognise individuals, they recognise teams, management and educators. Anyone who values excellence and makes improvements. They are essentially a celebration of all of your achievements. So, shall we get on with it? What you do with your day-to-day lives, I just admire you hugely. If you do These awards, as you know, are a celebration of achievement, effort, change, innovation, management, insight, and the many other traits necessary to sustain a proud profession like midwifery and consistent services in maternity.
We invite people to nominate a colleague or a student or a manager, whatever, where they think that person's real trailblazers.
And it's really a celebration of all that's good in midwifery and maternity care.
They recognise individuals, they recognise teams, management and educators. Anyone who values excellence and makes improvements. They are essentially a celebration of all of your achievements. So, shall we get on with it? What you do with your day-to-day lives, I just admire you hugely. If you do want to nominate a colleague, a friend, maybe yourself, please speak to the organisers and visit the website, and I really hope that we'll see you at that.
Okay, now the first award is. What's
nothing? I don't know.
We have had a 40% caesarean section rate in the National Maternity Hospital. That is major abdominal surgery.
Around 40,000 mums did not return to work in 2022. It's even more relevant if you're a mum who's experienced birth trauma.
We spend more money on litigation than we currently spend on the maternity services. It's bonkers.
It's in all of our interests, and particularly the government, to improve maternity services.
We can't achieve our mission unless we bring parents and professionals together.
A revolution needs to happen. We need to start working together.
I know it's a hard time, but for goodness sake, it's the best profession in the world.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Maternity Midwifery Hour. We're now Series 16 and Session 5. I always get a little buzz when I think, Series 16, wow. My name's Sue MacDonald. I'm the curator for the Maternity Midwifery Hour and the Maternity Midwifery Festivals, and it's my pleasure to be chairing this evening's session. And we're joined by two wonderful speakers, Dalvia Candola and Barbara Chisnikowska. And welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for coming this evening. And of course, we always invite our guests to share a moment of the week just to start things off. And perhaps I could start by inviting Barbara to share her moment of the week. Welcome, Barbara.
Welcome. Good evening, everyone. That's a tricky one. I was thinking about it this morning, but I think the highlight of my week was on Monday on Bank Holiday when my new spin bike was delivered by Amazon. So I was planning to replace. I had another bike, but decided to go for a little bit upgraded version. So yeah, Monday afternoon I was putting everything together, and it works really well. So yeah, I've been using since then. So that was my highlight of the week.
Wow. So spinning, that's the one where you go lots of different speeds. You have music.
Oh yeah, it's quite jazzy. Yeah, it's quite jazzy. You can stay for about an hour. I can go on it. I can put my little tablet on it and watch something as I'm sort of exercising.
Oh my word. Now this is Barbara is an example to us all. And she makes it sound so good. An hour of this spin biking.
Not every day, but that's probably the target.
Fabulous. Thank you, Barbara. That's lovely to start with. How about Delvere? Can you compete with that?
Mine's just spending some time with my nephew over the bank holiday. He's 2 years old,
Oh,
and I just love seeing the world through a toddler's eyes. And they're just they're like sponges. They absorb everything, and his speech is coming along, and he's putting sentences together, and he just comes out the most funniest things, and just really cheers me up. Toddlers are just funny. I know people talk about the terrible twos, but I just find him absolutely hilarious.
it's the why, isn't it? With little 2-year-olds, but it's wonderful. Actually, that's a really good moment to share, to sort of think about seeing life through a different lens. That's a lovely way of putting it. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, thank you to our guests. We're going to bring them back in a moment. I'm just going to do the usual little welcome, which is to some of you who are new to the Maternity Midwifery Hour, who may not know where we come from. We were born 5 years ago, and right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown in the UK, and we really started the whole hour because midwives, student midwives, and maternity care support workers couldn't attend anything very much apart clinical work. And so we wanted to make sure there was something for midwives and others to be able to connect, to get information, to get some continuing professional development, because we still needed to revalidate, and all that carried on. And so we started looking at a subject each week, and a lot of the subjects initially were about COVID and about the effects of it, and about different changes that were going on in service and education, which were really quite stressful. And I'm thinking now of how hard it was at the time, but also it was a great reminder of what midwives can rise to when they put their minds to it, and they can put their minds to it good and proper. So that was fantastic. But we've carried on. We don't do very much on COVID now. We do lots of things that are really interesting, and I hope you're going to enjoy this evening's. The thing I need to always remember to say to you is everything's recorded. Everything the Maternity and Midwifery Forum does is recorded. So if you should have a power cut, or a mouse eats through your cable, which has happened to one of our speakers once, actually, don't panic, because you'll be able to access this whole session tomorrow when you're sent the link, or on Friday when you get the podcast link, and you can catch up. The other thing is, and I should point you to the resources that are available through Paul, my colleague, who's feeding that all through on the Facebook Live. There's all the resources, and there's also Matflix, where everything's stored. So all of these things, these presentations are stored on Matflix. We've got thousands of recordings. And I need to remember 200. This is the 200th Maternity and Midwifery Hour. Need to remember that. That's just one of the things that we do. But they're all recorded, and you can access any of the recordings, especially if you subscribe to Matflix or your institution do. If you want a personal subscription, it's quite reasonable, and you'll see the rates when you go on the website. And you can always try and see how you like it. Health warning, once you go into it and you start looking at some of the presentations, it's a little bit addictive, and you can find that a couple of hours have wafted on, and you've filled your brain with all sorts of really interesting things. So that's your health warning for this evening. The other thing is, I always say this, and I really mean it, thank you to all of you for what you're doing. You're really valued, and I know it can feel like you're not, because it's really hard work. It's coming out to the holiday period, and people are going off on holiday, and the place a little bit shorter. It feels a bit shorter, but just keep on going and doing what you're doing to keep women and babies safe and well and cared for. Now, I'm going on to the news feature, and I have to say, I usually look for a sort of the National Awareness Week or a National Awareness Day, and I need to tell you, tomorrow is National Biscuit Day. I thought that would be of interest to midwives especially, but don't eat too many of them. Now, next week is Volunteers Week, and next month, 1st of June, and it's nearly 1st of June, is Pride Month. So there's going to be lots of activities, and I'm sure we'll have lots of links next week, over the next few weeks, that we can put on the resources sheet. And we've had, and of course, the events in Liverpool are with many of you, and I want to send good wishes and thoughts and prayers to anyone who's been affected by what's happened in Liverpool. It just shows how precious, for me, how precious life is. And you can be having a marvelous celebration and something horrible happens, and everything comes into sharp focus. But what I've been overwhelmed by is how wonderful the people of Liverpool have tied all together, and they've been looking after people so well. I mean, there's stories of people giving everybody lifts all over the country to take them home or take them in, give them cups of tea, make sure they're okay. And it just that illustrates to me the warmth that's there in Liverpool. So good on you, Liverpool, but take care, and we're thinking of you. There's an article by Anne Ugelis, who's the chief executive of ICM, who spoke at the RCM conference. She's done a really interesting piece on midwives as first responders. You'll know that the ICM had as its theme the midwives as the kind of chief people who are really important in an emergency, and it's a really good article. And there's again on available, it's a really interesting presentation with Anna Byram and Mary Louise looking at maternal nutrition. That's available again on the Matflix availability, or on, I think you can go on to YouTube as well to access it. Really interesting. And I'm always in a rush to make sure we get to the meat of the evening, which is we're looking at the importance of engaging with diverse communities. And we all have diverse communities, and we need to celebrate those diverse communities because they enrich our lives in so many ways. But we need to make sure that they're cared for, and we're using the knowledge from them in providing the care and services people need. So this is about improving clinical outcomes, patient experiences, and research quality. And our speakers tonight, who are very experienced in this whole field, will share effective strategies for community engagement. They'll highlight success stories and offer practical guidance on how you can apply these approaches in your own clinical practice and research initiatives, those who are into research. So firstly, I'm going to welcome Dalvia Candola, who's a consultant midwife. She's a lead for inclusivity at University Hospitals of Leicester. She specialises in cultural diversity and supports one of the most diverse cities in the country to provide inclusive care within perinatal provision. She leads on developing the best approach to tackling health inequalities and enacting quality improvement initiatives which underpin equality, diversity and inclusivity agendas. She's also, now I'm sure she'll talk about this, a core 20+5 ambassador, which is an NHS England role, which supports the approach to addressing health inequalities. She's also, I don't know how she fits all of this in her life, she's also an NMC Fitness to Practice panel member and senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. And this year she was awarded a pre-application fellowship with NIHR ARC East Midlands. So welcome, Delvia, the screen is yours, and welcome and thank you for coming this evening.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So as Barbara said, I'm going to provide an overview of listening to and engaging with our communities from a clinical perspective. And then my colleague Barbara will provide more of a research perspective. So first of all, why is it important? Why is it important for us to listen to and engage within our communities? Well, in maternity, developing community connections is a vital part of healthcare provision and addressing health inequalities. And for a long time now, we've been very lucky in maternity to have the Maternity and Neonatal Voices partnerships, and that's sometimes abbreviated to MMVP. And they're predominantly our source of public and patient engagement. But there's no MMVP out there that is inclusive of all underrepresented groups. And so sometimes when you need to have specific voices to be heard. It's really important that those appropriate groups are able to have a say and you approach them directly. Otherwise, we are at danger of generalising. And so the community connections established, and some of the ones I'm going to share with you today, are there to enhance but not replace our maternity and neonatal voices, partnership connections and relationships. So first of all, it helps us to learn, and it helps us develop our cultural awareness and responsiveness. So you have the real opportunity when you engage with communities to fully immerse yourself within that community, and you end up being their guest. So unlike when a patient comes to hospital, they end up being in a familiar surrounding that's familiar to you. But this is flipped, it's the other way around, and you're in an unfamiliar surrounding. And so you really get to feel what that's like, how lost you might feel, how polite people are to you, how welcoming people are, etc. And it also provides a voice to those seldom heard. And it provides an opportunity for us to listen and get some feedback on some of our practices. So within the NHS, we tend to use mechanisms like friends and family test, PALS, complaints, etc. And they inform us sometimes of what's going well, what's not going well, and helps us to shape and redesign some of our services. But if you have a look at who it is that accesses friends and family tests, PALS and complaints, they're predominantly English-speaking white British people. And so if we're using these mechanisms to improve our services, we're not really hearing all of the voices of the people that use our services. And so if we're using that to redesign our services, we're only ever going to redesign them and keep our services going for the majority of people who fill out the complaints, FFTs and PALS. So we're further widening that inequality gap. So whilst there's definitely work to be done to make things like the FFTs and PALS, etc., more accessible for a diverse range of voices, there's also ways that we can directly engage with our communities and get that voice from them as well. And it also supports with building credibility and trust. So unfortunately, midwifery services have been in a bad light for some time now in the media, and that has caused general mistrust within the communities. But by going to the communities, you can really share what you're doing to support change. And because you're visible, it really makes a difference on the ground. And you're going to the community rather than people coming to you. And people do start to think differently about how they're providing their services. It supports you being visible and being present and being available. So I'm going to provide some success stories now and provide some tangible examples of some of the community connections that have been built over the past 12 months in Leicester and Leicestershire and how these have made a positive impact. I'm going to share 4 examples. So the first example here is with Trade Sexual Health, and they're a Leicester charity supporting LGBTQ people. And through those community connections, Trade invited us to attend Leicester Pride in the summer last year. And it was absolutely fantastic. That photograph, if you're watching live at the moment there on the left-hand side, shows us at Pride, and we had over 1,000 people visit our tent. And the stall that we had there showcased how UHL Maternity are supporting LGBTQ plus service users. And we also included, with consent from the families, photographs of trans people who had used our home birth service and had had a home birth with us. And we also had a suggestion box for people to give us further ideas of how we can improve our service. And it really showcased how we were supporting the LGBTQ plus community within our maternity services. And we had lots of people visit our stall, as I said, of 1,000 people, but some of them were actually colleagues who worked in, different NHS trusts. There were commissioners, there were GPs that had come to visit us, and they all came to congratulate us on the work that we were doing and reported that we were really leading the way. And a lot of people said, we've never ever seen a healthcare provider, let alone maternity services, at events like this, and it was absolutely fantastic. So we tailored the information that we were providing to support our LGBTQ community. And through the connections, the charity also supported us with the development of a focus group to inform our perinatal guideline for trans and non-binary people. So the guideline shown there, perinatal care for trans and non-binary people, the public involvement in the focus group really helped us inform what we were going to put in the guideline. We then reviewed it with our focus groups and provided them with the edited version, showed how their voice and suggestions were incorporated into our guideline. And the group were really pleased with their involvement, and some of their feedback is shown on the screen there. So they said, I would feel safe in the care of UHL maternity staff knowing this guideline's in place. Well done, you've got this spot on, very minimal changes needed. This is fantastic, and I hope other hospitals start to include this. And I think you've done a great job. It is great that you have asked for our feedback on this. So really, really pleased with that. The guideline actually is available for anybody who wants to see how, what we've put together, because there aren't many trusts that have got a guideline like this. So there was quite a lot of work that came into that. So I'm happy to share what's in the guideline and some of the things that we've suggested. You can just Google that guideline and it will come up. The UHL guidelines are public facing. So happy for anybody who wants to access that. And then most recently, Trade Sexual Health have supported with the development of e-learning module for our staff. Just low-level information, but supporting our staff to understand terminology, what the colour of the pride flag means, what LGBTQ QIA plus stands for, etc. So they've also fed into that as well. We've continued our collaboration and work with them. Moving on to my next example. So this is an example from a place of worship for the Sikh community. So it's the Sikh temple, the Gurdwara. And the committee members agreed for my presence there at key times within the year. And this is to support some information sharing about pregnancy and childbirth. And first attendance was at Diwali, so one of the biggest festivals that happen within the Sikh and Hindu community, and we shared really important information on public health messages there. For example, mental health, which we know can be a bit of a taboo in the Sikh community. Shared how to access a translator in hospitals, the importance of early booking in pregnancy. We know that there's some disparities in late bookings with certain ethnic groups, and Indian is one of those groups. And I was able to speak to new parents, prospective parents, as well as grandparents and in-laws, which we know have a huge influence on decision-making for pregnant people and their partners. And that was a pilot. Attending on Diwali was a pilot, and it was such a success that we subsequently were invited to attend some baby and toddler sessions, ask the midwife sessions, and I was invited back to speak at International Women's Day about pregnancy and childbirth topics. And because I'm from that community myself, I was able to do it in English and Punjabi, so I used bilingual language skills and had that knowledge of cultural sensitivity to ensure that what I was sharing was received in a positive way. And places of worship provide a valuable platform to share in a lot of these key messages, especially when you're invited by community leaders, and keep getting invited back by community leaders who support and advocate for your work. And then finally, most recently, UHL Maternity was also invited to Vaisakhi, which is a Sikh celebration of the spring harvest. It's one of the busiest festivals in Leicester. And again, we were able to showcase some important information, including Punjabi dietary advice for diabetes, the importance of taking vitamin D in pregnancy, and much more. And there were quite a few people who were new to the country that had attended that festival to have that kind of sense of community. So I was able to talk to them. They were either trying for a baby, or just thought, well, in the future I might. Where do I start? What do I need to take? What's the good preconception advice? So it went down really, really well. Moving on to my third example, this is with food banks. So as part of my Core 20 plus 5 ambassador project, so just to explain what Core 20 plus 5 stands for, Core 20 relates to the 20% of the most deprived areas of England. And then the +5 elements relate to key vulnerable groups, pregnancy and maternity being one of them, and also additional inequalities, like, for example, asylum seekers, sex workers, homeless, etc. And so one of the ambassadors put me in touch with community leader Katie, who runs a food bank in Beaumont Leys, which is part of the Core 20 area of focus. And I just wanted to pay a visit and kind of learn so much more than I had anticipated. And up until then, only really thought the food banks were to support with providing food and supporting with food deprivation, but they're not. So what else they do? So they provide a range of different essential services to support overall well-being. They work really closely with libraries as well. So this food bank, for example, supported with connections and supported directly within the food bank itself with English language skills, digital skills like how to use the NHS app, prescription ordering, how to order your prescriptions, and CV writing and employment support. They also provided culturally specific food options like halal. They also provided gluten-free, and it was just a fantastic community resource. And midwives play a vital role in identifying challenges that families face. They're one of the very few healthcare professionals that still kind of enter people's homes, and so they can really witness the day-to-day realities. And there's a lot of time pressure during kind of appointment times with midwives, so it can be difficult to provide this comprehensive signposting to additional support like this. So I worked with Katie to design a really simple information sheet for our community midwives that provided an overview of the service and how the midwives can get in contact with the food bank, or how they can provide the information to their caseload to then get in contact directly themselves. And, you know, by increasing awareness of these community resources, midwives can really help ensure that families get the support that they need. And a lot of these initiatives, particularly things like libraries, which this food bank worked very closely with, are always under threat of closure because they're underutilised. Yet they are providing so much support, and it's just about knowing as a midwife that we don't always have to do everything ourselves. There are plenty of other services out there in the community that we can use to support the people in our caseload. And then my final example is with Leicester City Sanctuary, and they're a charity in Leicester that support asylum seekers and refugees. And through setting up community connections with them, we've been able to refer a lot of our asylum seekers and refugees within Leicester City to the charity, and they've really supported them with companionship, signposting to other services, and access to hot meals. And just last month, myself and a colleague were invited to attend a family event, and it was set up by the charity, and 15 families joined us to learn more about pregnancy and childbirth and how to access the NHS. And it was lovely because Amy, who's pictured here with me in the selfie there, she's our specialist midwife for asylum seekers and refugees, and was recognised by some of the family members that had continued going after she'd referred them, which was just really heartwarming to see. And, you know, we went to the people, we were visible, and we were there to explain how to access a midwife early on in pregnancy, again, how to access an interpreter, debusting a lot of pregnancy myths. And in addition, we did an activity with the attendees to help us understand how we can best support giving complex information in pregnancy. For example, the induction of labour process, which is hard enough to explain if you can read and speak English. So we did a bit of an activity with them. And then just last week, we were back at the charity. After it was brought to my attention from midwives that our asylum seekers and refugees, it's a generalisation, weren't following particular health information advice. And they kept coming to me and saying, but we keep saying this, we keep saying that, but every time I go, they're not following the advice. And I thought, well, there's got to be something that we're not doing right here then. Let's have a look at this differently. And we need to perhaps approach sharing this public health information in a more culturally sensitive way, rather than just our rote learnt information that we've been saying for years and years and years, and it's not actually personalised. And so I set up a focus group with the charity. with Maggie, who is the family's lead support. And she identified the people to attend the focus group. She provided us with a venue and refreshments. And, it was really inclusive. We supported parents who, people who've already had children, so there were parents, and we had childcare facilities there so they could take part in our focus group. And all of that made this focus group a success. And we had people attending from Sudan, Iran, India, Honduras, Ethiopia. They spoke an array of different languages: Arabic, Spanish, Hindi, Kurdish, Sorani, and much more. And they really helped us understand the cultural difference and some of the barriers that the way that we were currently approaching this healthcare information. And they also, most importantly, provided us with some solutions. So we're just pulling those narratives together and look forward at trying to implementing some of those solutions. And I'm happy to share that wider when it's gone through our internal governance structure, etc. And we will be keeping that group informed of how we've taken their solutions on board, or alternatives if we've not been able to go through with that. And Maggie's going to support us with keeping in touch with that focus group. And we're going to be providing them with a gift voucher each as well for their time. Comes a bit later on with my top tips with community engagement, not to expect people to do things for free for you. So we are providing a gift voucher for them as well. There's some feedback there on the slide. From the focus group, people were really happy through the time that we spent with them, and they were thanking us. Really, we were the ones that were really thankful, and they were just really grateful that they were listened to. And I just want to read out something that Maggie had sent myself and Amy afterwards. She said, "I think from these responses, you can see how much they valued being asked their views, being really listened to, learning from you, and also feeling they had something important to offer. I'd personally like to thank you for the very sensitive way you approached the session. I could tell that they all wanted to contribute and share their experience, and it was very moving for me to witness that. And I'm so glad we have developed this partnership." So really, really pleased with how that went. Okay, so just moving on then to my top tips. If you're looking to support with community connections in your area. So as I've said there, reimburse people for their time. That could be in different ways. I've said about vouchers. When I went to the food bank, I didn't go empty-handed. I stopped off at the supermarket. I'd looked online what it was that they were short of, and I filled a couple of boxes and took that over for them. And that's really, really important. You're asking for their help as much as you're providing them with support. It works both ways. Really, really important to keep in touch. When you're developing community connections, you shouldn't just go and get what you want from them and not ever make contact with them again. You've got to keep in touch, and that can be quite challenging, but there are various ways. So some of the ways that I keep in touch with various community connections, sometimes it's via email, sometimes on social media as well. I've invited them to things I've been going to. They can't always make it, but it shows I'm thinking of them. Sometimes I'll send just a message to, Temple for Happy Diwali, or to one of the women's charities that I work with, Happy International Women's Day, and things like that. It's really, really important, and that really supports that two-way dialogue. Following up with the community is really important. So if you're, for example, doing the focus groups, etc., or the guideline that I'd shared, it's really important that you follow, you keep them in the loop, and you don't just not see them and get in touch with them after you've got the information, because otherwise they'll just think, well, I'm not going to engage again. It's really important to support, building that trust and show how their contributions were really valid and how they've come to fruition. Amend your approach and make it appropriate and sensitive. So, for example, we amended our approach when we went to Pride, and we put up pictures from our home birth from a trans and non-binary perspective. We go to a Sikh temple, putting up pictures of any type of birth is probably not the most sensitive thing to do. So we reviewed that, but we provided information about the home birth service rather than photographs. It's really important. You do have to adapt the information that you provide, and be flexible. A lot of this has been taken part on weekends. Some are very last minute. So they might just get in touch with you and say, oh, there's such and such happening tomorrow, or, this week, we thought of you, could you make it? And it's important that not everybody works in the same way, and you have to be flexible when you're working with the community. So my final thoughts here before I hand over to Barbara is that building community connections takes time, and not every effort will yield the same results. You know, I've shared you my success stories. There are plenty of others where it's not quite what I'd anticipated to be. But don't limit your outreach to just parents or parents-to-be. Engage with everyone at these sorts of events and community engagements, including other attendees, extended family members like in-laws and community leaders. It's more about than just it's more than just spreading information. It's about building trust, shifting perceptions, and creating meaningful, lasting relationships within the community. Just share there my email address and social media handles, and I'll hand over to Barbara.
Fantastic, David. We'll carry on with Barbara next. And those of you who are watching, if you have a question, just pop it into the chat box and it can come through to you. So the next speaker, I'm delighted to introduce Barbara Chisnikowska, who's a Community Engagement and Inclusion Manager at the Centre for Ethnic Health Research, University of Leicester. She's got 20 years of cross-sector experience spanning academia, healthcare, government and NGOs. And she's a dedicated advocate for equity, inclusion and meaningful public engagement. She's worked with universities, NHS and third sector, and she's consistently focused on championing inclusive approaches in health research and community development, particularly by amplifying the voices of underrepresented and marginalised groups. So welcome, Barbara. The screen is now yours. And thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. How can I follow that presentation, Darby? You set the bar high, so I will do my best. So my presentation is going to focus on a specific research project looking at maternity experience for Gypsy and travelers women, and the type of research we deploy use art as a medium to convey some of the messages. So I will spend the next few minutes to explore how creative methods promote inclusion in the research, which I think Dalvi already explained quite a lot in that context, but also most importantly, how storytelling, how visual representation can promote work and engagement with underserved communities. Part of the presentation will be highlighting some of the insight from the maternity inquiry. Obviously, given the time space we have, that will be quite limited, but I will signpost you to a further reading on this. And lastly, I will look at some key consideration for public involvement while working with Gypsy and travelers, and actually how art can be one of the medium when we bridge that cultural divide and challenge some bias and things what exist sadly in our society and service provision. So before moving to specific example of the art project we did around maternity experience, I think it's really important to look why inclusive research matters. You know, we use lots of terminology about, you know, making things accessible, inclusive. I think Davi presented fantastic example of, you know, how you can deploy that in practice. And actually using slightly different method, different approach to this. We know it works. So, you know, by just doing traditional things as we always done, create the danger of excluding marginalized voices and, you know, this number of groups we could identify with this. From the perspective of our project, we felt art was a medium which created the universal language, particularly for groups where probably literacy is quite limited, or people who do not speak English is a really nice vehicle to create that. But most importantly, I think whatever we do is a service provision, is providing care, undertaking research. I think it's really important we guided by the key element of our principle, which is about building trust relationship, but actually making the engagement impactful, not just for our services, our research purpose, but actually for the community itself. And also, I think it's really important to acknowledge is that ownership element. So particularly within our project, which I highlighted later in my slides, is we created the ownership between community, the artists, and the research team. So that's again create a very nice space in terms of longevity and sustainability of that. And obviously the key theme of is co-production. So it's not just done by us, but actually working together with the community. So why we decided to undertake work with Gypsy and Travelers women and looking in the maternity experience? I think many of you on the call would not be surprised, historically this is very underserved, and the research group face many systematic barriers in stigma. I could probably put a number of different policy reports, documents which highlighted the inequalities for Gypsy and Travelers, and this is just a small sample on the screen. In terms of our research and context where we are in Leicester, we obviously got quite a substantive Gypsy and Traveller community with over 70 sites. Okay, shall I just stop sharing and do it again? Apologies for this. Okay. Thank you. Apologies for that. So in terms of our sort of local context, we obviously got quite substantive local community. Having said that, communities suffer from a number of poor outcomes when it comes to health. That includes, a high level of mortalities, number of, long-term condition, but particularly in terms of, maternity, there's, low level of undertaking screening, perinatal inequalities. And actually, if you look overall in terms of the life expectancy, when it comes to Gypsy and Roma individuals, the life expectancy is about 25 years shorter to a normal wider population. So that's starking health inequality. And I think, for someone, when we use the phrase old age, for someone in the Romanian Travellers community, that's around 60. So that's, again, is looking from the context. And obviously, alongside of the health inequalities, we have to look from the intersectional element and disparity. So we know this high level of unemployment, social inclusion, low literacy, and a number of other inequalities would sort of exacerbate some of the inequalities. So we did the project between 2022 and 2023, involve, like I said, using art as a methodology to collate feedback from our session, but also curate exhibition, which could be a vehicle for empowerment, for advocacy, and something the community can take with them. So part of the research was about exploring the whole maternity journey, looking through, neonatal, postnatal, but actually a community support as well. One of the key elements of our project was looking actually how influence of ethnicity or culture play a part in terms of accessing service, making decision about healthcare, seeking support. So that was sort of underlying theme. Through the project, we co-curated a peer-led workshop. So we work with artists and the community, and it was very much so about led by the community. And the final dissemination aspect was concluded with a community-based exhibition in a very sort of community-based setting. And then we've got the exhibition which travels across different venues. So in terms of the methodological approach, what we did, we have a focus group with a Gypsy and Travelers women. We also had a semi-structured interview with midwives. As I mentioned before, we had the art workshop where we curated some of the artwork, but also we conducted a systematic review looking at a wider issue in terms of existing literacy and some of the things highlighted in terms of inequalities as outcomes. So the next few slides are going to be example the artwork we really created with the community, which highlights the sort of key themes of our research. So the first one was around the cultural differences between what is the expectation and reality when it comes to the Gypsy and Traveller women. So The whole expectation in terms of maternity care is about, family center, very traditional birthing practices and gender role. And then when it comes to reality, some of the feedback we were getting, most of the feedback we were getting, it was about, it's very clinical, it's very, medicalized. There's no space for that holistic approach. Obviously, this is a sample of community we discuss. So again, there will be limitations in terms of people experience. Part of the discussion was also about accessing services and how people felt, there was the fear of judgment and discrimination, particularly when we're asking about equality data and monitoring form. So the image itself, it creates that sort of dual perspective where on one side you have the health professional advising and providing that information, and then on another side is the community advocacy provided by the older member, all the women, mothers, aunties, and so on, and the mother is in the center, which could be quite challenging in terms of who do you listen to, which perspective to counter. The second aspect, the thematic aspect of the work, it came around respect, and the image itself, it was something that was strongly advocated by the Gypsy and Travel women in terms of, the representation of the culture, life, and tradition, how important that is in the maternity journey. So the whole process of preparing and actually being ready, the whole community, family, being part of it, very colorful, very vibrant, and also identifying how important the gender role is. So, even within a society where we're moving and transiting different roles in a Gypsy and Travelers community, traditional model is really, really still quite common. And I think that was also highlighted through the discussion. The next image is about congratulations. So again, the babies arrive, the mothers leave the hospital and become part of the normal living. And I think the pictures itself highlight the complexity, the dynamics between the healthcare professional, where in the normal circumstances, women are advised to take a rest, prepare themselves, take that extra care after the birth, because that is really important. But actually for the Gypsy and Traveller women, it's one of the things that I identify and talk quite a lot is, when we're expecting a visit from healthcare professional, a lot of the time we have to prepare the caravan, we have to clean, we have to spend time, and actually, is again the reality and understanding how culturally that is important and embedded. And also the whole sense of pride and joy of having new baby. So one of the key messages from the artwork is really sometimes how this conflicted priorities and the limited cultural understanding from some healthcare professional could create, misunderstanding, miscommunication in maternity care. The next picture is really about a fatalistic approach to health, and the artist decided to create this baby vest. And if you look closely with the baby vest, there are quotes from the focus groups and the conversation we have, and actually looking from the whole journey, from the conception, some through the marriage to the maternity, and another element of child upbringing. And actually part of the conversation was about, the high level of baby mortality, and what is the view of the community and how do they see it. So through the conversation, it was quite clear. Lots of women highlighted the fact is a godsend, is a something decided beyond the control, and there's no impact in terms of how they can improve this. So again, it's interesting how probably there needs to be a little bit more advocacy and information in terms of it's not just a fatalistic way. It's about how do we bring that message to the community and the understanding of some of the risk factors. And again, I think there was lots of practical challenges. You know, the women sometimes left alone because the the husbands, the partners are focused on that sort of bread bring element of the. So there was lots of sort of pressure, complication, and challenges throughout the discussion. The last two artworks focus more about the future and actually how we can improve some of the challenges, some of the theme highlighted in the discussion. So those images represent solutions, some of the key consideration, and the tree of life is, you know, how do we foster greater spaces for discussion, open dialogue? How do we increase the cultural awareness from healthcare professionals and researchers as well, in terms of maybe some of the historical understanding, the preconception, some of the expectation people might have. So that was a little bit more, you know, ambitious and looking forward, but actually it was recognition, you know, women from the Gypsy and Traveller community really want to have that open dialogue and understanding, and at the same time the recognition their culture is really important to them and heritage in the maternity journey. So just few reflection from the project. Obviously, part of this was creative artwork, but actually the artwork itself, it focused on expressing the cultural identity and experience. We felt we were enabled a space and a platform for the unheard voices to be heard and actually visually represented. Part of the project will also bring the research team to local community and being part and building that trust and relationship, notwithstanding some of the challenges we face, you know, around stigma, literacy, the general research fatigue, general sort of low engagement from people. But actually one of the probably most important things is about how do we deliver that, and I think Darby mentioned in her presentation around being culturally sensitive, and I think that's sort of underlying thread throughout the work in terms of the engagement, the research, the dissemination, and what happened after. And I think again, one of the things that was highlighted throughout the conversation is about how do we empower community members from the Gypsy and Traveller community to become these advocates, to become, you know, something they can provide a bridge between community, healthcare professional, research team, or whoever is there to support them in that journey. And obviously, from our point of view, the visual narrative created that bridge between both angles. This is just few considerations, which I think already Dalvin mentioned some of the things. So obviously, the trust, the relationship is really important, and cultural competence. You know, how do you navigate that discussion and conversation? And I suppose one thing I would probably highlight it in this is, you know, we talk quite a lot in this sort of umbrella terms, Gypsy, Roma, travellers, but this is really important for the community. How do we distinguish this group? Because they have their own identity and culture, and I think the way we convey that message is also really important. And I would say one of the key things is about time you allocate, the motivation and the tools. So you can't do it very quickly. It takes a lot of time, and I think that's also important to recognize in your planning, in your project delivery, in the whole conversation. And on the infographical side of the screen, you see some of the key consideration. And this is just a reflection on my journey. So actually, when we're talking about time and how long it took me to build a relationship with the Gypsy and Traveller community, is about 10 years. And it was not easy. I think now I've got the open door policy, I could say, but actually it takes a lot of time, like lots of motivation, but also lots of sort of encouragement, and actually it's a two-way conversation. So you have to give something back to have that, so they can give you something back as well. So just to be mindful of, and I just want to acknowledge my colleagues who took part in the research and our fantastic artists who created this amazing artwork. So thank you very much.
So much, Barbara. Gosh, this is, I have to say, these are two really powerful illustrations of community engagement and the real nitty gritty of it. And Barbara, that was incredibly powerful. That the images are fantastic. And I was going to say, have they been kind of presented anywhere, like in an exhibition? I don't know if you mentioned that or I missed it or.
So we did, at the end of the project, we have a community-based exhibition for about 4 days. And so obviously that's aimed at the community itself, but also we invited the research community and another, professional. But that was about a year or so ago. But now we keep the sort of showcasing the exhibition in different places, again, making sure, it's visible, but also allowing the community to take the exhibition and present in their context. So if they maybe do something around gypsy and travellers awareness, they can showcase as an example of a research project.
Because these were done by an artist using the voices, rather than the women and families doing their art. Because when you started talking about art, I was thinking, crikey, these people are really fantastic, and the colours are so vivid. And I kind of imagined they were doing some of the art, but
so the artwork was curated by the artist. So the artist was present during the focus group discussion and obviously took some notes, initial drawings, and then the artist took this to her studio and done an artistic vision on it, and then we brought it back. That was the first sort of co-creation workshop, and there were a few changes because obviously some of the messages were related, maybe in slightly different contexts, in different colors, and then the women provided additional context. So in a sense, they were from the conversation but curated by the artist itself.
Fantastic. It was really, really, really interesting. And I think some really useful kind of messages, especially in terms of the life expectancy being so much lower than the whole population, and also the sort of the need for time and invest. I love the last infographic you shared, because I think that's a really good reminder to us all. You can't just pop in and expect people to trust you, because this felt very much the development of a trusting relationship, which obviously took a lot more time because of the healthcare work, healthcare professionals maybe never having done anything in this way before, not being as trusted or known. They didn't know us and we didn't know them, as it were. I don't know if I phrased that very well, Barbara.
No, you did, and I think that's, like I said, is that you invest a lot of time initially, but actually long term that pays off. And I can confidently say, and I can do any research on any topic now, and the door is open. But it doesn't happen very quickly, and I think it's also about the impact of that engagement. So I don't want just to research. I want to make sure the research impact and improve lives and improve the wider, things for the community as a whole. So I think that's also important to acknowledge. It's not just about involvement for the sake of it, but actually the impact of that involvement.
And I think that's really important. I think it came from both your presentations that it's about a meaningful change and about getting the voices out there or out to us, just as we're giving them information and maybe getting it wrong because we're not tuned into what they need to know and their cultural kind of needs, as it were. And when Dalvir, when you were talking, I was thinking it feels like you were becoming so much of the community, like we all would want to be as a community midwife, knowing your people, knowing the geographical area, knowing the people, properly knowing them. I don't know if you felt in that way at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not from Leicester, and this is my first job in Leicester. And so setting up those connections over the last 12 months when you're new to Leicester, not knowing Leicestershire, Rutland in itself is challenging, but it came with its benefits as well. So yeah, absolutely. But it's really important that you get involved with community connections as much of your community, your actual staff as well, because that's how it becomes sustainable. Because if you just do it with just one person, as soon as that one person goes, those connections could break and could come down. So it's really important. And we've had lots of people we've supported different elements as and when they can.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I was thinking also when you were talking, having used those 4 examples, that one of the positive things, because I think sometimes as a midwife, it can feel really difficult when you're with people, there's a poverty issue, people aren't getting enough to eat, they're not getting services necessarily. And this sort of mechanism of really understanding the community and getting to find out what they need in the way must be very positive as a midwife to be able to help them in a much more focused way.
Absolutely. And we get lots of things, you just want to help, you don't know where to go to get that support, and you just want to help, but that support is out there in the community. And there's lots of challenges for example, interpreters and language across England. And some people do think, well, why aren't we teaching new migrants and people who arrive in this country English? And well, in terms of taking that with a bit of a pinch of salt, we absolutely are, and there are services out available for them. But if you don't know about it as a healthcare professional, how is this new person, this new country, supposed to, find those? So it's about making every contact count and really having those services available on our doorstep and in the community. And they absolutely are. I mean, that food bank is next to a library, which is next to a GP surgery, which is next to a shopping centre. And before this, the midwife at that GP surgery didn't even know that there was the food bank. And so it's really, I think we're so siloed sometimes that we're rushing from one place to another place. We go in and we provide our antenatal clinic, we leave and we go and do visits and go to another antenatal clinic. And actually there's just things right on our doorstep that can help us do our job as best as we want to be able to do it.
I mean, the food bank example you gave was really interesting, because that did feel very much like a hub. And now when you describe it, it's even more of a hub. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we have some questions coming through, or comments. I've got Maria. Hi, Maria, who's an MNVP lead. And she says, do you have any advice for engaging with dads?
I think I can start maybe from the Gypsy and Travellers context.
Yes, that'd be lovely.
I think that is very tricky. So not just in terms of the maternity theme with it, but whatever research I've done with them is always the women, and the men are. I don't want to use the phrase hard to reach, because we tend to avoid this. It's the means how to you engage. But particularly for that cohort, I think engaging men is I would say it's slightly mission impossible, but it's possible. It's just probably, you need to deploy different tools. But then again, the women are quite vocal in terms of the fact they are the conveyors of the messages. So even the men are not present in the room, the message still goes to the husbands and partners and to the community and to the male cohort. But it's not a very easy context. And I think in terms of research itself, we're seeing female participation is more likely.
So it's more women's business. I know. Davia, would you agree with that? With the
and just to echo what Barbara said in terms of it, we have to make the way that we approach things personalized. So, if, for example, my advice would be that if we're trying to engage with dads, that when you're there, you provide materials and education that is specific to dads. So, for example, locally we've signed up to an app called DadPad, and it's all about providing parent education to dads. There's also co-parent pad for same-sex relationships, etc. So advertising that really gets the dad's attention, and then you can have a chat to them, and once you've got them engaged in one conversation, the conversation just flows, and you might be able to then ask something else or share some other information. And so there's that. There's also a hospital trust-wide app that we use called Access Able, which provides information about how to get to the hospital. That's sometimes what birthing partners and particularly dads are most worried about, is how to get to the hospital and where do I park, and showing them that, and they're like, wow, this is brilliant, this is really good. And then you talk about something else. A quiz goes down really well, even if it's a truth or myth, something that's a little bit funny but also it's got some serious elements in it as well. And they're just some of the things I've used before to support with engagement. But yeah, you can't use the same method every time. I mean, I've not even shared some of those methods in those 4 examples, but it's just something different if I was to approach dads specifically. It will be very different if I was to approach same-sex parents or potentially people who don't have anybody with them. It's very, very different.
And I think that the thing that I've jotted down is personalised care and really individualised care, and kind of each individual person. And as a couple, the couple's going to be different. They're going to have a different, and we don't know how they usually operate. I mean, I think some groups, like the Gypsy and Traveller communities, do seem very kind of, the men have this job, the women have this job. And other communities probably have variations on a theme to a certain extent. So thank you for that. Now I've got Philandra Costello. Hi, Philandra. And Philandra says, thank you. Great presentation. Yes, I agree. And completely agree that different approaches to spreading health information awareness is really important. We, and she's Central and South Genomics Medicine Service, are currently in the process of spreading awareness of genomics and the generation study within the Islamic community, with focus groups and videos that encourage discussion. We will have a report from this process we would be happy to share. The aim is to increase awareness of genomics and genomic research. And that's a really big thing at the moment, so thank you for that. And then Philandra continues, my question is really about this first steps. Are there any top tips to start? Take into account the genomics and genomic research and sharing.
I can start. I think I've done some genomics actually research with involvement. We had an external involvement with another academic institution with Gypsy and Travellers. So we have a couple of focus groups looking at genomics. And it was quite interesting because initially we felt the topic would be a bit alien, it would be difficult and complex. But actually the conversation were fantastic. And what was interesting to see, people have experience of genomics and genetic testing and so on, and actually allow for the richness of the conversation. I would say in terms of top tips, maybe initially create the soft talk activity. So just go and say hello, engage in a less formal context rather than full on having a focus group or public involvement. So maybe allow for that initial setting up time, build slightly that relation, particularly in the context of Gypsy or Travellers. When you go there, the first 15-20 minutes is about just having a cup of tea and biscuits, and I think you have to allow that time and that space for building the understanding. So I would say if that's the top tips, I don't know.
I think that is a pretty top tip, because you're reiterating the need for time. You can't rush these things. It's the investment of time. Maybe we need to think of it in that way. David, did you want to add anything to it as a top tip?
I
loved your top tips.
Yeah, other than those top tips, I guess for this, I'm not sure where Philandra's from, in terms of, is she doing it from a local perspective or a national perspective? Because the generation study is obviously national, and so maybe if you're not from from the national team, getting in touch with the national team, because they will have connections. Something as large as the study as that would have had to have community engagement at the inception. It should have, for best practice, through before it came to delivery, and that includes having something called an equality impact assessment, also sometimes referred to as HEAT, capital HEAT, health equity assessment tool, something along those lines. And that's looking at such studies like that, and are there certain groups that could be misrepresented, underrepresented, disadvantaged by particular research elements. And it might be that something cropped up for there because of mistrust or God's will, or not believing in genomics, etc., etc. And that really will kind of be the seed. Once you've got that will give you some directions as to where to go to start developing those community connections. That's something probably additional that I can add to that.
Fabulous, thank you. Gosh, that's fabulous. Okay, and we've got another comment, and this is from Tony Thornburn. Tony, he says, engaging with trusted leaders within communities is fundamental. Continued engagement, as highlighted, essential. Very well done to these initiatives. So you get a little applause, I think, for that. Now, I wasn't sure if there was some other comment coming through, because I'm very aware of the time. Now, I always say this is the fastest hour in the week. And I think we might have one question, because I can see Paul's typing something in at the moment, so it might be coming in. Oh, Philandra says, thank you, Philandra. She says, sorry, I have many questions with regard to social media. Do you think this is a good route to engagement with communities? This is our final question. So this would be, let's start with Barbara and then go into
I suppose I don't think you can have a yes and no answer. I think I would say, judge on the merit and which community, which, cohort, age, and so on. Personally, we use social media as well, but I would say, it's always assessment on the basis who you want to engage and what the message you're conveying. And also you have to remember, social media is bombarded with lots of stuff. So, what are you posting, in the morning, people might not see it by lunchtime. So I would say it's one of the medium, but it's not end goal how to engage with communities. And also I think from personal experience, sometimes when we promote stuff in social media, we get lots of sort of bots and chats and unrealistic people basically contacting us, and again, that's a danger. But I would say use it as a tool, but with a caution, and assess, in terms of a merit of your engagement.
Fabulous. Thank you, Barbara. How about David? Do you want to add to that now?
Yeah, completely echo what Barbara said. And I think sometimes if we are going to use social media, it's best to come from the community leaders themselves. So if, for example, the place of worship or the charity that you have social media, it's best for them to share it directly rather than you. And it depends also on the platform. If you're going to share something on LinkedIn, it's not going to reach the community as well as something like Facebook. So it depends on your platform as well. But I agree with everything Barbara said as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you. What a lovely way to finish. And as I said, this is the fastest hour in the week. And I want to say a big thank you to Delvira and Barbara for joining us this evening. And I should have said right at the beginning, I did say it was all recorded, and you will get a recording link. And please do share with your colleagues. If you're a student midwife, do share with your student group, because I think Barbara and David have shared some really important messages, the key messages, as well as kind of the story and the time investment that you need, because it's no good us coming in front of women and giving an antenatal class about what we think they need, if that's not what they need. It's, we need to make that investment to give them what they need in their culture and be very culturally sensitive. And those words, I've jotted everything down from this session. It's been really fantastic. So thank you so much to Dalvir and Barbara. Also, thank you to Angela, who's taping this all to make sure it's available to us all. Thanks to Paul for putting in the questions through to us. And next week we'll be here, same time, same place. For those of you who want to come up to Manchester to the next festival on the 8th of July, this is not the first time I've said this. You could organise a little mini break up there with your friends. I'm finding when you have these face-to-face events, I love Zoom, but I love meeting my midwife colleagues face-to-face, and new students, and anybody really, because we do operate very much face-to-face as midwives, and we love telling stories. And when you were discussing social media just now, I was thinking, really, we need to do a lot more face-to-face and connecting. That's the name of the game. So in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and share with your colleagues. We're very happy for you to share, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, stay safe and well.
We have had a 40% caesarean section rate in the National Maternity Hospital. That is major abdominal surgery.
Around 40,000 mums did not return to work in 2022. It's even more relevant if you're a mum who's experienced birth trauma.
We spend more money on litigation than we currently spend on the maternity